I'd like to take a moment to explain what this amendment is. It is an important amendment. It's, I think, will provide a vast improvement on our system, our voting system. And let me preface it with this. We heard the issue in the committee yesterday, and unfortunately, my impeccable logic and wisdom was not conveyed entirely to the committee members, and we didn't succeed in this. But it is a fundamental issue, and this is why. When we are trying to craft election law, it's important that we keep two principles in mind: a balance. On the one hand, you've got a system that you want that is going to make sure that every voter who is legitimately a voter and is allowed to vote is able to without any undue barriers. And on the other hand, you want to make sure you've got a system that is secure enough, that has enough integrity in the system, so that those who are not supposed to vote don't vote, because that simply dilutes the votes of those who are voting legitimately. So it is that careful balance, that difficult balance to achieve. And we do a lot of things on both sides of that, but this amendment here gets to the heart of making sure that people who are not supposed to vote don't vote. And let me tell you how it does this. Under current law, you can register to vote up till 20 days before the election. When you do that, you'll fill out a voter registration form or card. It'll go into the system through the counties, and then you're going to get back a card. It's called a postal verification card. Essentially what that is it's the state's way of verifying that that is a legitimate voter residing at that correct address. So if that postcard is delivered, then we assume that that is a legitimate voter at a legitimate address, and that person is entered into the statewide voter registration system. What happens if that postal verification card is returned back to the state, undeliverable? Well, then we know that it's a bad address or that person does not live there. So then what we do is we put them into the system not as a registered voter, but a challenge status. And when that person, should they actually show up at their precinct on election day to vote, they're going to have to provide proof of residence. And we do that as a double check. That's a good system. That's what we have. But we also have in Minnesota a system called election day registration. And with election day registration, voters will show up under current law. If they don't have proper documentation to show where they live, they can be vouched. Now, I think there's a lot of problems with that. In our modern society where we're computerizing things and we're tracking things and we're seeking accuracy, to just have a fallback position of, well, here's someone who they live here and I'm going to vouch for them, I think that's a major loophole. That's a problem. People ought to be able to prove where they live in order to be allowed to vote. Now, we don't want to, however, turn people away, disenfranchise them if in fact they are a legitimate voter. So what we want to do is we want to find a balance. We want to find a way how we can allow them to vote if they're supposed to, but not let them vote if they're not supposed to. And we do that through a provisional ballot. And the way this works is when a person shows up at the polls and says, I'd like to vote, here's where I live, but I don't have proper documentation, the election judge will say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a ballot, but we're not going to count it right now like we normally do under current law where it gets counted. We're going to hold it over here in a pile, and we're going to hold it provisionally, and you have 10 days in which to prove to us where you live. And if you are in fact a legitimate voter living where you say you are living, and you can prove that with the proper documentation, then we're going to take your ballot and we're going to feed it in and we're going to count it. And that's well within the window of time for for county or state canvassing boards to make sure that that vote is counted when they certify the election results. So there's no issue there. So members, it's very important. Under current law, if it's a person who's not supposed to be voting, their ballot gets counted. And if the postcard comes back and they're not supposed to have voted, there's nothing we can do about it. And votes are counted which shouldn't be counted. Under this provisional ballot system, what you're doing is you're saying, we're not going to disenfranchise you, we're going to hold your ballot temporarily, and you've proved to us where you live, and then we're going to count your vote. It's a superior system, and members, it's one that we need to enact. So I would appreciate your support on this amendment. Thank you.